the idea of how we approach it, I'm really glad you raised that, because, you know, you take someone like Terence McKenna, who you mentioned at the beginning, who would talk about these kind of far out ideas of kind of conversing with the mushroom and these entities and things. And it makes sense that for someone like him with a great linguistic capacity and a rich imagination, that he could generate these symphonies of psychedelic experiences that maybe other people going in with the kind of with the clinical prompting that they should move towards surrender and having a unitive experience. It makes sense that you can have a wide variety of different experiences, including trips that you call negative because you, as you say, have this narrative that this drug is doing something to you that you don't like. And it makes me think that in this conversation, something that I guess bothers me is, so you and I clearly have found therapeutic value in this approach, but we're also the kind of people who are interested in psychology, read about it, and go in think, so that when things happen, we're like, this is that kind of experience, and there's some level of already knowing how you might want to respond to it. So you can kind of, it's a skill, right? Feeling your way through the experience. And if someone were to kind of just dive headfirst into this with no interest in that stuff, I can imagine them having a completely different experience that wasn't therapeutic. So do you have any, is there any advice that kind of comes to mind as to like how you navigate these experiences, or, for people who are already experimenting with this stuff, any kind of, tips?
Yeah, well, I mean, all of Decomposing the Shadow is sort of laying that out for people. And then my follow-up book, The True Light of Darkness, was doing the same thing, but from a storytelling narrative where I sort of walk people through my experiences and how I made sense of it and gathered it. But yeah, I think there's a point here, and eventually I think I'll get back to the question you actually asked rather than responding to a statement in the middle of it, is about how I don't really think that you need to have a lot of psychological understanding or pre-established whatever, or certain level of intellectual engagement or capacity or blah, blah, blah. I don't think that that's necessary at all to have a positively therapeutic experience with psilocybin. All you have to have is enough sort of preparation to establish a context of use that is safe enough to experience what's happening without anxiety, panic, and fear. And if those things arise, that you're in a context where people can help you out, even if it's just your friends. Because the thing is that as much as it's deeply therapeutic to like go in and start like crying at old wounds when you're like 6 years old, and remapping your sense of self and the world as a consequence of recognizing how this one event blah 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 led to blah 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 blah, and then your depression goes away and blah blah blah, it's also possible to take the mushrooms and just go out and be out in nature with some friends and just enjoy being moved by the beauty of things, being moved by the joy, by the sadness, by this like this peak moment of grief and gratitude, flowing through you, to feel the connection with others, to feel the connection with other things, just to go out and have a wicked, sick dance. These things are therapeutic too. I said recreational. I have no problem with recreational. I feel like these substances deserve respect. I think that without that respect, the likelihood of things going wrong increases, like unpreparedly wrong, like, oh shit, now I'm in the middle of a thing I had not anticipated because I was using it recklessly. And I speak from personal experience. That's a real thing that happens, but also at the same time, I think it doesn't have to be ill people to get benefit. It doesn't have to be psychotherapeutic to get benefit. And I think this is why it should exist as more than a pharmaceutical medicine, psychiatric medicine treatment. I believe in decriminalization. I also believe in good licensing protocols and legislation to prevent misuses of power in a provider recipient relationship inside of the industry or the institution of psychedelics. But like there's a lot of value in these things that aren't all psychotherapy and all the rest. Now, you did actually have a question, though. Did I answer it? I think I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure I didn't actually.
It was about any kind of any kind of advice that came to mind for helping to navigate the trips, but you pointed people towards your book, which is a valid way to address that.
Right, right. But okay, look, the reality is this is my job. I write books, I make a podcast, I help people do with integration coaching as well, although that's not primary. I don't really try to promote that very much because I'm more focused on reading, writing, building great content. I'm there for people who feel like they need to talk to someone, and for whatever reason, it seems like I might be that person. But my primary income is people buying books and giving me money for appreciating the podcast I put out for free. Something like yourself. Do you have a Patreon, don't you?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So yes, people, please, listeners, go buy my book. But also, I won't expect you to do that to get some benefit here. I would say that one thing I would put forth is to be conscientious in how you prepare yourself, and if you are able to lean in to the safety of secure friendships, especially those who are people who are experienced and seem to have a respect for the mushroom. And also familiarize yourself and be prepared that sometimes it doesn't feel good. And the presence of pain does not mean things are going wrong. The presence of pain sometimes is a part of the process that you're here for, and the other side of it is likely something more beautiful than you can fathom. So to set yourself up in a way where you feel safe, and are in a context where danger is reduced, because those things are different. And having someone you're with, people that you're with who are familiar, is good. In a stable environment is good. In a house or in a park, not on a freeway. And is there anything else there? Yeah, I mean, this is, everyone's heard this before, right? Start low and go slow. You can always take more, you can't take less. If you've never taken mushrooms before at all, ever, and it's going to be like this is your first time and you're just doing it and it's not being held by like a professional guide, probably 2 grams or less is a good roll, or a good trip. A roll is another thing. Yeah, you start low and go slow. It makes more sense to feel like, yeah, that could have been stronger, but I liked it as your first journey. Then that was too much, and now I'm afraid to go back. I mean, anytime you get to a deep place, the fear of going back is real, because it can be tough. It takes courage to take the dose over and over again. But for your first time, low doses generally, they're pretty approachable with psilocybin if you don't have any pre-established concerns about bipolar or schizophrenia. Then I'm not a doctor, don't take my advice. But those are some words that I spit out, assuming that nobody would take them as advice.